This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 121, How to Set Your Subject Matter Experts Up for Success. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is May 7th, 2015. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for the palindromic episode number 121 of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and on Stitcher, so if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. It means you'll get new episodes automatically delivered to your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. The month of May, we are starting a new month, and this month is going to be all about working with subject matter experts, also known as SMEs. It's going to culminate in our next VIP webinar called How to Work with Subject Matter Experts on May 27th. To grab your spot, just go to resonancwebinar.com. Would love to have you join us. Last week, we had a terrific interview about niche networks with Joseph Tripke, Managing Director of OilPro.com. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to click on over to iTunes or to Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. This week, we are diving into our topic of the month, and we're going to talk about some ways that you can set up your subject matter experts for success. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. Actually, not a whole lot going on news-wise this week, folks, which I gotta say is kind of nice. You know, we had back-to-back announcement from Google, the whole Mobilegeddon thing, and then we had the Facebook announcement that our reach is going to suck even more. So it's kind of nice to have a quiet week. I do have a couple of items. Number one, we've been talking a lot about streaming video apps on this podcast. We talked about Meerkat, and then Twitter announced Periscope. So live video streaming is definitely a hot topic. I do need to remind you that you need to be very careful where you use that streaming video, because different organizations are coming out and banning it because they don't want their content broadcast over some average Joe's Meerkat or Periscope stream. For example, the National Hockey League has announced that it is banning Meerkat and Periscope from its hockey games. So you cannot sit in the stands at a hockey game and hold up your phone and live stream any of the action. They will not allow it. And several other organizations have come out against and saying that they will not be allowing live streaming. So, by all means, embrace live streaming video. It's a very powerful tool, but just be very careful, especially if anyone else's content is involved. For example, if you are at a conference, there are probably rules against broadcasting the keynote speaker because that is considered proprietary information. So, like I said, by all means embrace it, but just be very careful where and how you use that capability. Okay, some news from Pinterest, and this is one of those things I'm not quite sure what to make of it, because the blog post announcing this feature was so incredibly vague that I have no idea what it is, but I will share what I know. Pinterest is working with marketing development partners, also known as MDPs. And I'm going to quote from you, I'm going to give you a quote from the blog post where they announced this initiative. The MDP program is a program that helps businesses optimize and scale their Pinterest marketing and improves Pinterest for pinners. So apparently they're trying to walk that tightrope where marketers are interested in throwing advertising dollars. However, they don't want to make it such a marketer fest that it diminishes the experience for the average pinners. They are currently working with a very select group of partners, so this MDP program is not open to everyone. And they're also, these partners are helping Pinterest to build custom tools and APIs to help businesses use Pinterest more effectively. That's really all I know, just kind of a high-level overview for now. If you want to know more, I suggest you go ahead and hop on Google and just Google Pinterest MDP program, and I'm sure there will, if there is more information to be had, you will be able to find it out that way. Okay, our content hit of the week is a post called How to Bring Trust and Credibility to Your Website. This is by Diana Huff over on the Content Marketing Institute blog. What interests me about this post is that Diana talks about a seemingly insignificant content asset that we never think about. You know, we think about the homepage, we think about our landing pages, certainly we think about our sales pages and those conversion pages, but things that we never think about are pages that have contact information, that tell people about us and that allow people to get in touch with us. And she specifies 3 areas. Number 1, that contact us page. Number 2, the about us page. And number 3, your client lists, where you list the clients that you work with. And, you know, like I said, these are pages that we just kind of set it and forget it. We don't really think about them. We just kind of plop the information out there and turn our attention to sexier things like landing pages. But as Diana points out in this very well thought out post, it can make a huge difference in our credibility, how we handle those pages, especially in the B2B world. So very interesting post. I highly recommend it, and I will provide the link to it in the blog post for this week's episode. Okay, that's it for this week's update. Like I said, a nice quiet week, which I don't mind at all. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please shoot it on over to us so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment, how to set your subject matter experts up for success. You know, a lot of people have asked me recently, Rachel, why are you bothering to devote an entire month to working with subject matter experts? Why are you devoting so much time and attention to this one fairly small aspect of content marketing? And the reason is, it is a result of feedback that I get from actual marketers. You know, I'm really fond of asking marketers to tell me about their biggest challenges and the things that they struggle with and the biggest bottlenecks that makes it difficult for them to do their jobs. And I have heard over and over and over again, working with those subject matter experts. You know, they're very busy. This is not their job. It's the last thing on their priority list. So that's why we created the month of the SME, the subject matter expert. And, you know, if you really look at it, the first thing I encourage these folks to do is to have a little understanding. You know, look at it from the SME's point of view. Marketing is not their job. They are very, very busy. I assume they're very busy. I don't know anyone who is not very busy these days, quite frankly. You know, it's not like it's going to come up in their job performance annual review. Someone's going to ask them, well, how many blog posts did you contribute to this year? Probably not. And you know, think about situations in your own experience where somebody from a totally different department has needed something from you. You know, think about your last mandatory compliance training. Okay. Something that, you know, you probably got an email from HR saying you have to do this, and then they're following up with you and it's the last thing on your list. Well, that's kind of how our subject matter experts can feel. You know, it's not, they have plenty to do. They're overloaded already, and they've got this other thing on their plate. So that's why I created this month of talking about dealing with or working with our subject matter experts. And, you know, the key to a successful relationship with your SMEs, I think it's like the key to any successful business relationship, is to set them up for success, is to really approach it not as you need to give me this so that I can do something that will deliver what I want, but to really view it as a partnership, and to really be committed to helping them to be successful. And that's going to make for a much more pleasant relationship, and you're going to be much more likely to, get those phone calls answered, to get those emails answered. So today I want to share with you 5 strategies for setting your SMEs up for success. Strategy number 1, establish mutual respect from the outset. So from the time you first approach your subject matter expert about contributing to your content marketing program, make sure that you establish mutual respect. And, to cite an example from my own experience, I work with a lot of clients in the healthcare industry. And when I tell colleagues about that, they say, oh, working with doctors, you've got to deal with those big egos. And I have to say, you know what? I have never really had an issue with them. I think if you make it very clear that you are respectful of their time and their expertise and their opinions, and if they want something you cannot give them, you can explain why, and they, and it's fine. So I think when we work with subject matter experts, whether we're talking about brain surgeons, petroleum engineers, IT guys, and hey, I'm married to a programmer, so I feel you on that one. But establish mutual respect. Make it clear that you respect, number one, their expertise, and you can set that up by saying, we really want to have your input. You're the expert. You're the go-to guy or go-to woman on this. We really need you. And then make it clear that you are respectful of their time. I think it goes a really long way to say, hey, we know you're busy. We respect that, and we so appreciate if you would take time out to help us with that. I think just establishing that mutual respect from the outset. And what I find is that when the marketer or the content person expresses respect, that respect comes right back to them, and your SMEs are going to be much more likely to approach you respectfully. So strategy number 1, establish mutual respect from the outset. Strategy number 2, make sure they have a thorough understanding of the why behind the what. So often subject matter experts, they'll get this email from some random person in marketing saying, hey, we're starting a blog. We need you to contribute. Here's the date of the blog post that you're going to contribute to, blah, blah, blah. What I find makes for a successful relationship is really sitting down with them. And I do recommend personal interactions. Email is great, but at least when you're first getting that relationship started, do as much as you can in person or over the phone or maybe even via Skype. But make sure that you are clear on why you're doing what you're doing, and just say, we're not setting up a blog just because it's fun to do and everybody else is doing it. Make sure they understand this is going to be good for our search traffic. This is going to be great to grow our thought leadership. This is going to be great for getting more speaking engagements for subject matter experts like yourself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And once you do that, then it's not just, do this, but you're really bringing them into the strategic side of the process and letting them know why what you're doing is important. It's not just to have something else to do or just to do something that everybody else is doing, but make sure they understand that purpose behind the content that you're asking them to contribute to. Strategy number 3, set a timeline, not just a deadline. So when you sit down with your subject matter expert, if you're talking about a particular resource, whether it's a blog post that you want them to contribute to or maybe something more substantial like a white paper, make sure you set out a timeline. Not just, okay, we need your input by this date, but back it up from your publication date and set milestones along that timeline. It's like, okay, we would love to see a first draft from you by this point, or we would like to interview you by this date, or however you want to set it up. And that way, it's not just, you're not just going along your way assuming this person is working on whatever you've asked them to work on, only to find out the day before the blog post or whatever is due that they haven't gotten around to it and they don't have anything for you. And again, it makes for a much more pleasant relationship just to set it out, to to make sure that they have ample time to deliver what they need to deliver, and that they understand when that publication date is and how you have thought out that timeline. They will really appreciate that. Strategy number 4, work with their contribution styles. So when you start working with a new SME, just sit down and talk about, and sometimes I just open the question, what is your preferred way of working with us? Some SMEs like to talk. So for those, it might be beneficial to set up an interview with a person on the marketing team and have them record it and create a blog post on or an article or whatever it is based on that. Some SMEs like to write, and some SMEs are very good writers. So if they are interested in doing that, then you can set up the process to accommodate that. Just make sure that you leave ample lead time to be reviewing what they've written and making sure that it's in line with your brand, in line with best practices for blogging or article writing, et cetera, et cetera. And just leave it open for them to recommend or to talk about how they would like to work with you. I have a client, and we have worked out the best way to work together, and that is we decide on a topic, and then she sits down and writes me this huge stream of consciousness email with just kind of like everything thrown in, and just, like I said, total stream of consciousness. And it works really well because I can read through that. I see everything that she is interested in saying, and I can go in and pare it down to the essentials and create a really terrific blog post based on what she's given me. So work with your SMEs, figure out or decide together with them the best way for you to work together, and stick to that and make sure that you abide by any wishes that they express in that first meeting. And then number 5, check in at regular intervals. So, you don't want them to feel like you are hanging over their shoulder saying, okay, when am I going to get it? When am I going to get it? Check in with them with an attitude of helpfulness. Check in and say, hey, how's it coming? Were you able to find the research that you needed for this piece of content? And then one thing that I find is always helpful is to maybe end those conversations with a question like, is there anything more I can do to help you move this process forward? Or is there any other way I can be of assistance to you in contributing to the attainment of this goal? I find they really appreciate that, so that it's not always, are you done yet? Are you on track for meeting this deadline? If you're not going to make it, let us know. It's not that type of communication, but it's really more, we're all in this together, and we all want to create a successful piece of content, and how can I be more helpful to you? So those are my 5 strategies for setting your SMEs up for success. And once again, you really do want to set them up for success. It's going to be a much more mutually beneficial relationship. It's not going to be this adversarial thing where, they're dragging their feet and you go to your boss and complain, and your boss goes to their boss and complains, and it's some big adversarial kerfuffle. If you set them up for success, you will save yourself a lot of time and heartache down the road. So if you have any questions or want to add to the conversation, I would love to hear from you, and I will give that contact info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to share a little trick that I found very helpful when working with those subject matter experts. It is often so helpful to show them an example of what you're looking for in the finished product. And this could be a piece of content that your own company has created, or it could even be a piece of content that a competitor has created. Because when we're trying to understand something, we're trying to take that in and create a picture in our minds of what it looks like. And it is so helpful to see an actual real world example. It really helps the light bulb come on. For example, when I work with my boxing trainer, sometimes he'll explain things that he wants me to do. He's like, okay, get your right shoulder up, spring from your back leg, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm trying to process all this. And then he shows me, and it's like, oh, that's what you wanted. And the same thing happens when we are working with those subject matter experts to try and put content together. Sometimes people hear specifications like it needs to be about 600 words, it needs to speak to this audience need, it needs to have a conversational tone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes that understanding it's not that they don't understand what we're saying, but that understanding is kind of superficial. They're trying to process it and create their own picture of what that looks like. But if you show them an example, then it all comes together. It's saying, okay, for example, here's a blog post that is a good example. It's the right length, it's the right tone, etc., etc. So when you're working with your SMEs, use examples liberally so that they are on board with what you expect in the finished product. Okay, campers, that is it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. I certainly have enjoyed our time together, as I always do. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via the RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it, and I want to thank everyone who has left us reviews thus far. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our website at resonancecontent.com, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. I also invite you to check out our monthly webinar series on the fourth Wednesday of every month. Our next one is Working with Subject Matter Experts, and I would love to have you join us. To grab your spot, go to resonancewebinar.com, and that is going to be on May 27th. As always, I like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from Eleanor Roosevelt. She once said, quote, "Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people." Unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.